welcome back to the Star Wars Expanded Universe, narrated by Disney, or Lucasfilm, whichever way you slice it, Legends. Today, I have for you Book 5 in the X-Wing series, Wraith Squadron, by Aaron Allston. Now, there's an interesting story as to how Aaron Allston got to write basically most of the remainder of the X-Wing books. But I'll leave a link in the description to Matt Wilkins' video, as he doesn't really go too much into what the actual plot of the book is. He kind of just talks about the background and how Allston got to do it. Also, right off the bat, this is not the best of what's to come, but I already think it's better than Rogue Squadron. And that's for a few reasons. People that get to know me know that I generally tend to lead toward character-heavy stories. Plot is good. I like a good plot, but it's not my main priority. You can have a fairly weak plot, but if the characterization is really strong, I can forgive it. I mean, I'd prefer to have both, but I would rather have strong character development and moments within stories than have this super interesting, super well thought out plot. That's less of an importance to me. So long as the plot isn't completely nonsensical, I can accept it. I think I was in Discord servers, or was it on Instagram? I don't remember, but it was also on Matt Wilkins' live stream that he did a little bit ago, and they were talking about two different shows, and talking about how they're both kind of equal in terms of like how good they are, but it was a matter of like which one is better. And the two shows are Babylon 5 and Star Trek Deep Space Nine, both of which are shows that are very similar, which is the same thing with Rogue Squadron and Wraith Squadron. They're very similar kind of groups and stuff, but what won out was DS9, at least to Matt and to me, because the plot of both is super good, but character-wise, there's only a couple characters that are actually great in Babylon 5. You have a lot of decent, fine characters, but then you only have a couple. This is what you come back for. DS9, kind of all around, you have that sort of character stuff. I'm using this analogy for a purpose. Rogue Squadron is the same way. You have characters that are fine, and then you have the characters that are memorable. The characters that are memorable, Wedge Antilles, Tycho Soko, Cornhorn, Myrax, Booster, who shows up in the one book. Everyone else is just kind of there, and they don't get as much development as other characters. Wraith Squadron, we get introduced to quite a cast of characters. Kel Tainer, we have Piggy Vort, who is a Gamorrean. We have Base Lauren, who's an actor, also if you can hear that loud TV. And we have Ton Fannin, okay, and Tyria. And just all around, the cast is more well-rounded, all kind of have good characterization. And Wedge comes back, but he's not the central focus this time. In fact, he even states that he's not as close to the Wraith Squadron as he is to Rogue Squadron. Rogue Squadron is more like more like his equals, his friends. Here, he doesn't hate them, but he's more of their leader than actual friends. I mean, I'm sure he's friends with them, but it's not the same, you know? And so, the essential plot of this book, without spoilers, is Wedge Antilles, mostly because Aaron Allston wanted to write new characters, but Wedge Antilles wants to make a new squadron. Because a lot of times in Rogue Squadron by Michael Stackpole, Rogue Squadron is a pilot group, right? They do flying missions. But more often than not, they had to do commando stealth secret missions as a secondary objective, even though their main, I guess, what's the word for it? Their main expertise is flying. So Wedge wanted to do the reverse of that this time, where their main expertise is commando, infiltration, doing this stuff, and piloting is secondary to them. So it's kind of the utter reversal of the group. Also, he wanted to get a bunch of degenerates. Not degenerates, I guess. You want to get a bunch of people that had a kind of a shady past in the sense of like they haven't played well with others, or they're kind of reckless or whatever, and kind of bring them together to make this like ragtag squadron. And so we get that. Um, and they end up getting control of an Imperial ship, and they end up pretending to be Imperials for a large portion of time to infiltrate other places, blow them up, blame it on rebels following them, and it's this whole thing, it's this whole thing that gets orchestrated into the final battle at the end of the book. But and then there's a lot of stuff in between with character moments and everything, which is stuff that I personally gravitate toward. I don't want to spoil too much because spoilers, but a lot of character interactions in this book, in between all the action and getting the missions done. I mean, if we're talking verbatim what the plot is, they get control of the ship. Face Lauren pretends to be like this admiral on the ship, but he's not. They'll end up as Imperials finding this place. Then Wraith Squadron will go blow it up or something, messing it up, and then they'll keep going on their next path. And they want the Empire to think that they're being followed by rebels instead of actually being rebels, and that works for most of the book. We also get introduced to Warlord Zinji here. He's not a big part of this book. He's, he shows up here and there. He's clearly the big bad. He's just kind of orchestrating things, but the main bad guy in this book is actually Admiral Triggett. But what I also appreciate is that Warlord Zinji has been referenced in almost every Rogue Squadron novel. He just hasn't, they've said in passing, like, stuff that Warlord Zinji is doing, apart from Yasan Izar and everything. But now we're finally starting to get to see what he's been up to. So I think that's good setup that the previous books established that Aaron Allston was able to, include. But I do think that Aaron Allston is a superior writer to Michael Stackpole. I think I can say that definitively now after having read this. And I think he just makes his characters more likable. There's a lot of scenes in here that, didn't have me in tears or anything, but had me genuinely moved. And I know there's a specific scene in the next book, which I'm really looking forward to revisiting to see how I feel about it. But Allston has a really good grasp on characters and writing them. There's a couple characters that are a bit weaker. Grinder, the Bothan teammate, is not as interesting. And there's a couple others like that are just, not really fleshed out in the story. But the ones that are, Tyria, Keltainer. Keltainer less so, but he's still interesting. Ton Fannin, Face, the two jokesters of the group. And the fact that that Face is an actor. Like, that's just so creative to use an actor to help with missions. Because his backstory is he used to be like an Imperial propaganda actor. Which I thought was really cool. And then there's Piggy, which is probably one of the most creative characters to ever be created in Star Wars. Piggy is a Gamorrean who was experimented on by the Empire and is now super intelligent. It's just wonderful. I absolutely love that. And the characters go through so much. Tyria has her stuff going on. Keltainer, I'll say, because it's fairly early on in the book, Keltainer has a history, or his father, I should say, has a history with Wes Jansen, which was pretty interesting. But yeah, I think this is pretty solid. It is about on par for me with Wedge's, not Wedge's Gamble, the Krytos Trap, I think is the third one. That it's about on par with that. If my memory serves me correct, then Iron Fist and Solo Command is going to absolutely break all of Rogue Squadron and firmly supplant Aaron Allston's books as superior in my mind. But here it's pretty equal. But already with the characters, I can say that I think I prefer this. But yeah, without spoilers, pretty much it, guys. I loved revisiting this book. It was a lot of fun. I forgot how much I really enjoy the X-Wing books. They're really good, and I would say, either start at Truce of Bakura or start with the Squadron novels. I think, it's a good place to start if you want to get into the expanding universe. And also, if you want to know more about Wedge Antilles, this isn't really the series for you. Definitely read Rogue Squadron first if you want to know more about Wedge Antilles. Wedge Antilles is definitely more in the background in this series, and it's more about all these new characters. But yeah, really excited to read more because I remember big things in this series, but I forget a lot too. So I'm excited to see what happens moving forward. Anyway, thank you all so much for watching. I'm gonna get into spoilers, slight spoilers. If you don't want those, now's the time to go. Otherwise, see you in a moment. 3, 2, 1. I only have a couple things here. First off, we get our cameo for the book, which is for like a chapter. Han shows up, so that was nice to see him because it's if you're reading in chronological order, it's felt like a while since I've last seen Han, so it was good to see him again. One of the members of the team, who I didn't mention in non-spoiler, is Akbar's niece. And she, of course, later on in the book, she's one of the deaths. And I didn't cry or anything, but this is the first time that I think I really cared about a death in one of these books. Like, there's been death in almost all of the Rogue Squadron books, and I haven't really cared too much, if I'm being honest. Because, again, I don't think Stackpole really wrote characters that I cared enough about with the time given to feel bad for them. This happened in the comics, too, that Stackpole wrote. I didn't care about most of them. It's not that they were written badly, there was enough about them to care about what happens to them. Like, if you were to watch somebody on the street that you didn't know get hit by a car, like, obviously you're going to be like, oh my god, like, that's awful. But you also don't know them, so it's not going to impact you nearly the same as it would if that was, like, your mom, So it's a different situation. Also, we get stuff with Tyria's backstory. It's interesting that Tyria does have the Force in her, at least a little bit. And people want her to be a pilot specifically for that reason, because they compared her to Luke Skywalker. Which I think was really interesting. This is also, I think, the first time we hear about the Antirian Rangers, which are not mentioned much in the expanding universe, I don't think. But the Antirian Rangers in the Old Republic, or in the prequels, were basically fairly normal people that might be slightly Force sensitive, but don't have enough of the Force to really affect the physical reality. But they still want to help the Jedi, so they would be like this unofficial, very small, like more like a militia, I guess, like army for the Jedi, which is a little weird because there was nothing before the clones, or at least that's how it seems. There is a video that maybe I'll leave a link in the description to, that Mandalore made on the Antirian Rangers, but it was just a little weird thing because, as far as I recall, most of my book reading during the prequel era, they weren't really a thing. I think they might have been mentioned in Republic Commando because Karen Travis and military stuff. But other than that, they don't really get much attention in the EU as far as I could tell. So it was I don't know. But it seemed this was written in what 1998, so I think this was the first time we heard about it. We also have Min Donos, who's this character goes through a lot, and if my memory serves me correctly, there's a lot more to go on with his character moving forward. But he's dealing with a lot of PTSD. That's what it seems to be clearly. And he breaks down in this book, and everything about that was really good. I didn't even mention Min Donos in non-spoilers, but again, this is just an excellent example of superb, just like, character moments. And then Keltainer himself with his guilt and his shame over not being able to protect people, and his anxiety attacks, it seems like. Now, he gets over his anxiety fairly quickly at the end of the book, but I can forgive it because it's Star Wars. Obviously, when you actually deal with anxiety, it's not something you can just snap out of existence. This is a psychological state that you're in, and might require medicine, or might just require years of working through that to get through it. But it's not as simple as I think this book makes it out to be. But at the same time, a lot of movies and shows and stuff, they do that, where it's like, oh, it's fine now. I still think while he was dealing with it, it was dealt respectfully and it was dealt fairly well. So, that's basically it. I don't have too much more to say. But yeah, I really enjoy this one. And I'm really excited to read Iron Fist. I remember that one being the best one of the X-Wing books. And we'll see if that remains true when I read it again. Anyway, I gotta head off to work, so I'll see you guys next time. Remember, may the Force be with you.